like taking so long. Little few challenges. So welcome to meeting number 4 of the House Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates. Today we'll receive the briefing from the Procurement Ombudsman. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. Regarding the speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do the best we can to maintain a consolidated order of speaking for all members, whether participating virtually or in person. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. Given the ongoing pandemic situation and in light of the recommendations from public health authorities, as well as the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on October 19, 2021, to remain healthy and safe, the following is recommended for all those attending the meeting in person. Anyone with symptoms should participate by Zoom and not attend the meeting in person. Everyone must maintain 2-meter physical distancing, whether seated or standing. Everyone must wear a non-medical mask when circulating in the room. It is recommended in the strongest possible terms that members wear their masks at all times, including when seated. Non-medical masks, which provide better clarity over cloth masks, are available in the room. Everyone present must maintain proper hand hygiene by using the hand sanitizer at the room entrance. Committee rooms are cleaned before and after each meeting. To maintain this, everyone is encouraged to clean surfaces such as the desk, chair, and microphone with the provided disinfectant wipes when vacating or taking a seat. As the chair, I will be enforcing these measures for the duration of the meeting, and I thank members in advance for their cooperation. Just to touch on a little bit of committee business before we start, I wish to speak to members about the meeting of the committee taking place next Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. We had planned on starting our study on air defence procurement. However, we will not have had time to contact witnesses after the members' witness suggestions are submitted on Friday, February 11th. The analysts have noted that the Office of the Auditor General has written reports relevant to the committee's study of air defence procurement and national shipbuilding strategy. So to ensure that we have witnesses present for next Tuesday, I instructed the clerk to contact the Auditor General's office. They have responded by saying that the Auditor General is interested in appearing, but not available. However, representatives of the Auditor General's office can appear on Tuesday, February 15th, to discuss their reports related to the committee's studies of the air defence procurement and national shipbuilding strategy. And just so that you're aware, many of these officials were involved quite extensively before this a couple of years ago so that they can provide information. If anyone has any questions about this, please contact me or the clerk. I will now invite the Procurement Ombudsman to make his opening statement. Recognizing that he doesn't have a mic, we do have 2 hours, but I will ask you to speak slowly so that the interpreters can give your message out and not have challenges in doing that. So with that said, I turn the floor to you, sir.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So first, I'd like to start off today by acknowledging the traditional and unceded territory of the Anishinaabe people of the Algonquin Nation, on which we live and work here in Ottawa. So thank you, Chair and members, for inviting me back to the committee. It's my pleasure to be here, and I hope that I can be of assistance. I'm joined today by the following members of my office. David Rabinovich, who I believe is also experiencing a little technical difficulty, who's the Deputy Procurement Ombudsman. Margarita Finn, also experiencing a technical difficulty. Director of Procurement Inquiries. Amy Dubois, Director of Communications. Derek Mercereau, Procurement Practices Manager. Alan Bazinet, Procurement Practice Manager. Michael Morden, Procurement Review Manager. Chelsea Young, Senior Risk Advisor. Melissa Chian-Flown, Senior Risk Advisor. And James McAdden, Analyst. So each of those present with me today has played a key role on one of the reports that were recently released by my office. La pandémie de COVID-19.
The COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically changed the way we live and work. As such, I would like to thank the public servants at all levels of government across Canada, including the IT, translation, and administrative professionals who made it possible to work remotely, enabling this commission in particular to carry out its important work.
A little bit about the role and mandate of my office. I'd like to start by explaining my role in federal procurement. As some of you are not part of the committee when I was last here almost 2 years ago. The Office of the Procurement Ombudsman opened in 2008 with a focus on providing small and medium businesses an avenue of recourse for procurement and contracting issues. My office operates at arm's length from other federal organizations, including Public Services and Procurement Canada. We purchase services related to human resources, finance, information technology, and select other corporate services from Public Services and Procurement Canada through service level agreements. I report directly to the Minister of Public Services and Procurement Canada, and the Minister is required to table my annual report in Parliament. While I report to the Minister of Public Services and Procurement, the Minister has no involvement in my office's daily activities or the content of my reports. Specifically, my legislative mandate can be broken down into 4 sections. One is reviewing complaints regarding the award of certain contracts for goods below $30,300 and services below $121,200. This is when a Canadian business files a complaint about the award of one specific contract. It's usually a supplier that's bid on a federal contract, has not been awarded the contract, and is not satisfied with the department's explanation. For contracts at or above these dollar value thresholds, the supplier can seek redress through the Canadian International Trade Tribunal. Second, we can review complaints regarding the administration of certain contracts regardless of dollar value. We do rarely receive this type of complaint, but when we do, it most often pertains to late payment or non-payment. Number 3, we can review departments' practices for acquiring goods and services to assess their fairness, openness, and transparency, and make recommendations for improvement. These are usually systemic reviews where we look at roughly 40 procurement files and opine on how the department is conducting its procurement activities overall. There are no dollar value limitations associated with these systemic reviews, and they include both high and low dollar value procurements. Number 4, provide alternative dispute resolution services like mediation to suppliers and federal organizations involved in a contract dispute when both parties agree to participate. This is a highly successful and effective service offered by my office, which is unfortunately underutilized by federal departments. Like our systemic reviews of 40 procurement files that I just mentioned, there are no dollar value threshold limitations associated with our mediation services. We can mediate contracts valued at $6,000 or $60 million. So as you can see, my legislative mandate is quite specific. In October 2020, my office signed a memorandum of understanding with the Canadian International Trade Tribunal to ensure that Canadian businesses are granted easier access to available complaint redress mechanisms and made aware of the timeframes within which they must file complaints with either my office or the CITT. L'existence du Bureau de l'Ombudsman.
The existence of the neutral and independent Office of the Procurement Ombudsman has never been more important.
Effectiveness of my office, I've proposed changes to some of the Procurement Ombudsman regulations. I'd like to request that the Procurement Ombudsman be able to recommend compensation of more than 10% of the value of a contract up to the amount of the actual lost profit incurred by a complainant. I'd also like to be able to compel rather than ask or request departments to provide documentation necessary for my office to conduct reviews. The name of my role in my office to be changed from Procurement Ombudsman to Procurement Ombudsperson to better reflect the community that I serve. And I'd also like to propose an additional change that was not raised in my last annual report. The suppliers bidding on contracts awarded under the procurement set aside for Indigenous businesses be given a right of recourse to my office in the event issues arise. I believe that when set-aside program for Indigenous business was created, it was not well understood that complaints arising under this program would be outside the jurisdiction of my office and the Canadian International Trade Tribunal. This is a systemic barrier that must be removed. I also want to make sure that procurement stakeholders are aware of how my office can help resolve federal contract disputes. Malgré les restrictions qui empêchent le rassemblement public.
Despite restrictions that prevent public gatherings, my office has continued to initiate virtual contact with federal procurement stakeholders to raise awareness of our services and to provide a platform for them to share their experiences.
We also continue to host our Diversifying the Federal Supply Chain Summits to connect suppliers with government and private sector organizations whose services can help them better understand federal procurement and obtain federal contracts. We recently held our 4th summit on January 26th and 27th, which attracted more than 800 participants over the 2 days. When we started this summit in 2019, there were limited Government of Canada events that brought together the various government programs and initiatives in one place for suppliers to learn what supports may be available to them. Over the years, we have now began to see an increase in other supplier diversity events hosted by federal organizations However, the continued increase in participation and registration at our summit indicates the continued and growing importance of our summit. The federal procurement realm can often seem daunting to suppliers, and navigating through the various departmental programs and initiatives can be challenging. Our summit offers a one-stop shop for suppliers to learn about many of the Government of Canada business supports available to diverse and Indigenous-owned businesses. J'ai aussi écrit au
I have also written to the deputy heads of 83 departments requesting that standard language be added in the form of clauses about OPO services in their solicitation documents, contracts, and rejection letters. Most small and medium-sized businesses that could benefit from our services are not aware of our existence. There is no better way to remedy this than to insert references to our services directly into procurement documents. The purpose of these clauses is to provide providers with clear information on how to file a complaint with my office or to use our dispute resolution services if a problem arises.
We regularly hear from Canadian suppliers, including small and medium-sized business owners and diverse business owners, about the challenges they face when doing or trying to do business with the Government of Canada. My office compiles the issues brought to us by stakeholders, either at outreach events, through our website, or through our intake team, into a top 10 list that we include in our annual reports. This list ensures that federal decision makers are aware of the most common concerns expressed by procurement stakeholders and helps enable them to develop practical solutions to the issues raised. For each inquiry or complaint that my office receives, we explain our mandate to the supplier in case they need our investigation services or our mediation services, and provide them with an answer directly or point them to an organization that can, such as the CITT, the Competition Bureau, or the Information Commissioner. As always, we will be there to review complaints and to provide mediation services so that businesses and departments can get back to business. My office has a successful track record in mediating contract disputes, and I urge all of you, especially any suppliers listening, to contact us in the event you need assistance in resolving a dispute during the performance of a federal contract. My office remains committed to helping our stakeholders in any way we can. That includes connecting them with the right resources when their issues fall outside our prescribed legislative mandate. To help our stakeholders better understand key issues in federal procurement, my office conducts knowledge deepening and sharing research studies. During the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, my office published a study on emergency procurement to inform both federal departments and suppliers on how emergency procurement practices have been utilized in response to past disasters. Building on our study on emergency procurement, we also published another study on force majeure to provide some clarity to federal procurement community about the legal framework related to a force majeure clause in the context of emergency procurement. In closing, I would like to thank committee members again for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to speak about our office's services to Canadians. I urge you to let businesses in your ridings know about the existence of our services should they ever encounter issues or disputes regarding federal procurement. I'd now be pleased to answer any of your questions. Thank you and merci.
Thank you, Mr. Jeglick, and I appreciate that. And just a reminder that when you answer questions, if you could slow down a little bit when you answer, just so a bit easier for the interpreters. I appreciate it. I know you want to get that information out quickly, but it would be appreciated. Okay,
Sure.
we will go to our first round, and it'll be 6 minutes, and we'll start with Mr. Paul Hoos.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, Mr. Jeglick. Thank you for joining us. Very easy first question. We're talking about your mandate. We know it's limited to the range that you mentioned. Do you think we should raise those thresholds given the amounts that we deal with today?
Bon, merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question. I will answer in English if that's okay with you.
I think the question is clear, whether we should in fact be able to raise our monetary thresholds. And I think the answer is equally clear that the answer is no. The CITT has a clear mandate at or above those thresholds. And as a result of free trade obligations, there is a requirement for a mechanism to resolve those disputes. So it makes the most logical sense for them to retain that jurisdiction and for us to be mindful of why we were created, which was to provide a redress mechanism for those suppliers who didn't have one with the CITT.
Thank you, merci. Dans votre rapport 2010,
In your 2019-2020 report, you looked at 4 of the 20 main federal departments and 53% of invitations for bids, only one had one offer. How do you explain that?
Well, and that's also a great question, and something that was brought to our attention. So it wasn't something we were expecting to study. It was simply something that did come across our review, as when we were doing our 3 lines of inquiry, we did notice that in many competitive solicitations, there were only one successful supplier. And we started to analyze why that would be, and we kind of boiled it down to a question of simplification. So that's the primary answer is the process is so complicated that it doesn't really incentivize competition. But the second reason, and this is something that we have also heard, is suppliers are aware that particularly in service contracts where there is an incumbent, typically they're not interested in participating in a process because they find it very time consuming and believe that the incumbent has an advantage and therefore don't participate in the process. So while that hasn't been fully vetted, those were our suspicions as to why we were seeing that high number of single bids in competitive processes.
Donc, c'est ça, le processus vraiment.
So the process is too complex. So are there a lot of companies that don't have the internal resources to deal with the government because of the complexity? To sell their products, it's always the same companies who know how to operate within this, who know what the criteria will be. And so it's often the same companies. And so as ombudsman, have you raised that? You raised that in your report, but do you think there's a type of favoritism in some departments favoring the same businesses for a variety of reasons? Because it's something that I saw in your report, so I'd like to hear more about that, please.
And it is a fair question. It's something that's raised by our stakeholders. It's not a conclusion that our office has reached, but it is something that we have heard. So I just want to be clear, it's not something we tested for specifically, but we do look for bias in the evaluation criteria throughout all of our systemic reviews, and it is something that we see periodically.
OK, merci.
Okay, thank you. In your 2 most recent reports, you've said that the Department of Defense is in second place for departments with problems. So what type of problems do you mean with contracts? What kind of contracts are a problem with the Department of Defense?
To be honest, I anticipated the question. I'm not sure if David Rabinovich has been able to join the call, but he's actually done a review of each one of the files. So I might go to David if he's on the call. David, are you on?
Yes, Alex, I'm on. And let me know if you need my charger. I'll run over and bring you my charger as well. But I can speak to the Department of National Defense. In 2021, we had 36 issues raised to our attention, and it says that in the annual report. I have a list of them in front of me. I'll be happy to go through a few examples in no particular order. In one of them, the first one that came to us in that year, 3 contracts with D&D to provide hotel rooms, and the supplier was told to reserve 100 rooms, and the department notified him that they would only be requiring 10 rooms. And he told us, the supplier told us, that he'd already put down a deposit on all 100 rooms. So we looked into it, we spoke with the department, we liaised with the contract officer, and after some further digging, it was revealed that the supplier had never sent the initial invoices to the department. And he consulted with his lawyer and he changed his course of action. So he dropped it on his end. Another example, a supplier submitted a quote to the department for a solicitation under Pro Services, which is a supply arrangement. It's a contracting vehicle where you have pre-qualified suppliers. He hadn't heard back from the contracting officer, so of course he contacted our office. We contacted the contracting officer on the supplier's behalf, and the contracting officer gave a debriefing to the chief executive officer of the supplier's company. So the issue there was he hadn't received a response from the department.
Thank you, Mr.
Another,
Me for,
okay, I'll stop.
but if you have other examples, if you could put those in writing and submit those to the committee, that would be appreciated, putting that into the committee and send that to the clerk, such that the clerk can then distribute it to all the members. Thank you. Excuse me, point of order?
Simplement de dire.
I'd just like to say, I want it to be on the record. I understand there are situations where witnesses don't have microphones, but it does mean that the interpretation is very, very difficult. Interpreters are doing nearly superhuman efforts to do their work at an adequate level. So I want us to ensure that witnesses have their microphones. And given the difficulty of properly hearing, could we have the answer in writing, please?
Thank you, Ms. Vignola. And yes, we are aware of that, and we are hoping that all the witnesses will have microphones. It's, as you've indicated, is very important for our interpreters. It's very challenging to them, and so even when we ask them to speak slowly, it still is a big challenge. So I appreciate that and recognize that. We will now go to Ms. Thompson for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Mr. Jeglick. I'm going to really focus on Transport Canada. So I don't know if it's you or one of your team, but whoever is best suited to answer is perfectly fine. Of course. So the first sort of starting point, understand that Transport Canada has developed standardized forms, templates, and processes for bidders. What is the significance of standardization?
So I can certainly answer that question. So one of the big benefits is, as you can imagine, suppliers often sell multiple goods and services to the same and different departments. And so in each iteration, when they participate in a solicitation process, if the process looks and feels different, then ultimately it takes additional time and effort to respond to those bids. So we understand clearly that there are nuances between solicitation processes, but to the extent that the terms and conditions can remain static, it makes the system more efficient. And that was something that we noted as a positive practice within the Department of Transport.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to tag another question in there because I think it links. So Transport Canada's practices, how would you say they compare to other departments at the same size?
Right, and that's a fair question, and we expected that question. So we didn't actually evaluate them on a comparative basis. So the plan is at the end of the 5 years, then we follow up with each department and determine whether in fact they have complied with the recommendations. And so at that point, we'll be issuing more of what looks like a report card to determine whether in fact the compliance has in fact met the recommendations. And at that point, I'll be better positioned. One area I can certainly highlight within Transport Canada was documentation. As I'm sure you noted, in 30 of 38 files, documentation was an issue. Now, to be fair to Transport, it was also noted that this was very much in the early days of the pandemic, and they did not have access to one of their buildings, which could have contained many of the documents that were missing.
Thank you. I took care of one of the questions because I did wonder about that. So I just want to switch to training and ask you sort of more generally, what is the importance of training to Transport Canada, and then to link into any recommendations that you would have that would relate to best practices?
Right. So whenever we find issues, and so in Transport's circumstance, there were several issues identified. And so certainly an aspect of that is to behave differently. And so simply creating a document might not be the answer alone. It has to be reinforced with education. So again, just a documentary change alone will likely not meet with any different result. And it has to be a culture change and an understanding, and that can only be done through education. And that doesn't just apply to Transport Canada, it applies to all departments and agencies. And it's something that we really underscore. And I just, if you allow me, want to make one point. The training is incredibly important because the seminal policy that was the Treasury Board contracting policy is being phased out, and it's been replaced by a procurement on directive on the management of procurement, which is more principles-based and has less granularity. So training is incredibly important to make sure that as we transition to a new environment, that everyone understands what the obligations look like. And if I may add, it also makes our office more important, because where the rules are clear, we're simply adjudicating the facts based on the rules. But where the rules are less clear, that interpretation that's required from our office becomes that much more significant.
Thank you. The next question you touched on in your opening remarks, but just want to circle back for a moment around closures of certain Transport Canada workspaces during the pandemic, and just the link to how that would have complicated efforts to retrieve certain documents that were sought by your office, and sort of continue on there. And if this is the case, how have you been able to work around or rectify this?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially, we did do our file reviews in person. And so we would physically go to the offices and do file inspection in person. And so obviously with the COVID dynamic, that has changed. And so we've transitioned to doing exclusively online or e-file reviews. And while we appreciate that there are departments who have both e-files and paper files, many departments have successfully migrated to e-files. And so rather than put a halt to our reviews, we took that into consideration. And one thing you'll likely hear me say many times today is we report the facts. So we identified the number of cases where we saw missing files, but we also noted the fact that it was during the pandemic and that could respond to some or many of the missing files or documents in those files.
Thank you. In your procurement practice review of Transport Canada, you noted that there were some inconsistencies in the evaluation criteria for bids. So Transport Canada responded that they would implement training activities and materials and enhance the contracting peer review process. In your view, are these measures sufficient to respond to the concerns?
At a high level, yes. But ultimately, I think the real determination will happen once we're able to do the follow-up review, which happens 2 years after the report is issued. So I don't want to presuppose until I see what actually was implemented. And once that's better understood and known, then at that point, we'll be able to make that determination as I described earlier.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you so much.
We'll now go to Ms. Vignola for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Jeglick, for joining us. In your report, you specified that you received few complaints regarding COVID-19. Following the writing of your report, did the number of complaints related to COVID-19 increase?
And so that is a fair question. And so it is something that we were surprised by. We were anticipating a higher volume. And so I would suggest that in that first year to the report that you were highlighting, there were very few COVID related cases. Then in the subsequent financial year, the cases increased. And now we're seeing a decline. So in total, since the pandemic began, we've seen about 70 or so cases related to COVID related procurement. That being said, none of them resulted in a review of complaint. And so none of them were fully vetted to meet all of the regulatory requirements to launch an inquiry. And maybe, David, if you wanted to jump in and provide just a few examples of the types of complaints or the cases that we saw that were COVID related.
Sure, Alex, I'd be happy to. I also want to apologize for the poor audio. Yesterday's test with the headphones was great, and today it didn't work and we're on our iPhones. So I apologize if I'm not clear. COVID, like Alex said, about 70 since the pandemic started. One was barriers to participating in federal procurement. This supplier wanted to sell to the government. So we put them directly in contact with the Office of Small and Medium Businesses. I think they received about 30,000 calls from Canadian businesses looking to sell PPE, personal protective equipment. Another supplier complained about, I apologize. Another supplier complained about a discriminatory policy and that COVID purchases were not included in the procurement set aside for Aboriginal businesses, which is now called procurement set aside for Indigenous businesses. Another one that was that a department did not provide a debriefing to an unsuccessful supplier whose bid was not accepted. In that case, we put the supplier in touch with the business dispute management group at the department so that they could get debriefed. Another one was insufficient bidding
Merci
period.
beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Rabinowitz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rabinovich. We can't go through all of it in 6 minutes, but thank you for your generosity in your explanations. A simple yes or no. There are a number of contracts related to national security. Have those contracts undermined opportunities for companies to complain when there are problems?
Yeah, so certainly the invocation of the national security exemption does impact a supplier's ability to bring forward an action to the CITT. One thing that has been brought to our attention is that NSE continues to be an issue associated with COVID. So in 2020-21, we saw 11 NSE-related cases. And in this year, in the first 6 months, we've seen 7 national security exception-related cases. That being said, we've also launched a knowledge deepening and sharing piece specifically on the NSE to provide for a better understanding as to what exactly it means, what exactly the prospective outcomes are, and how we can make considerations for maybe change. And so that piece should be published by my office before summer of 2022. And it's something that potentially could establish reasonable grounds for a subsequent systemic review related to national security exemption.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much again. Your answers are always insightful. Thank you. Earlier, in your opening remarks, you said that few people are aware of your services. You also mentioned the challenge for companies of following the process for contracting and understanding it, etc. In your report, you also mention that your mediation service is not very well known. And so in the end, there are things in the procurement guide to help companies in contracting, but how can we better inform companies, small, medium, and large companies? Although the large companies seem to be well aware of what to do, how can we better help small and medium-sized businesses, inform them of your services, of mediation that departments seem to use less, and the role of negotiating agents in facilitating this process?
And that's a great question, and one that I would love to address because it's something that has preoccupied our time from at least the outset of my tenure. And the easiest way to do this is by having specific language in contracts, in solicitations, in regret letters, making it very clear and understandable to all suppliers that our services are available. And so we've written to all deputy heads for departments and agencies under our jurisdiction, asking them to include that language in those documents. And so we've met a certain level of success, but we'd like to see even more. And so that's the primary way. But the other aspect is also outreach. So you mentioned small and medium enterprises.
Excuse me for interrupting there, Mr. Jeglick. I apologize. Unfortunately, 6 minutes goes by extremely quickly. And so if you have any additions to that answer, if you could provide those in writing, it would be greatly appreciated. It's a great question, and we'd love to hear the answers. So thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Johns for 6 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Jeglick. Thank you both for being here, Mr. Rabinovich. The annual report reaffirms the office's commitment to fostering diversity and inclusion in federal procurement. Touched a little bit on it Can you talk about some of the key barriers to diverse suppliers, Indigenous, Black, and other diverse suppliers wishing to do business with the federal government?
Absolutely. So one of the main issues, as was touched on in an earlier question, is predominantly large and sophisticated suppliers are well aware of government procurement and how it works. But as you can imagine, diverse suppliers aren't currently part of that supply chain in a meaningful way. And so they're not even entering the supply chain as subcontractors in the levels that they should. But one of the issues that we see more than anything is the lack of overall data. We don't know how many diverse suppliers are actively winning federal contracts. And so it's very difficult to come up with an answer to the question you've asked without better understanding kind of baseline data. So
can you speak a little bit about how adequate the government's data collection practices have been in that regard? And also, has your office contributed to data collection about diverse suppliers?
So that's a fair question. And so specifically to our office, we did, along with the questions where we put to deputy heads a request to put language about our services in contracts, solicitations, and regret letters. We also conducted a survey about what types of activities those departments are doing specifically related to diverse suppliers. And again, that survey was conducted almost 2 years ago now, but the results were not overwhelming. But what we have seen is we've seen a renewed focus in this area. And so, as you heard in my opening remarks, we've done 4 diversity summits, and each year we're seeing more progress being made. And so this year, Public Services and Procurement Canada announced the fact that there were a departmental focused social procurement policy. And so that will actually enable data collection in a much more meaningful way. So before that, there wasn't really that requisite level of policy coverage to collect the data, and that now exists. So we are hopeful that that tool itself will improve the data. But it's something that I mention with regularity, and it impacts all decision-making associated as to how to improve systemic barriers for diverse suppliers.
And the previous committee back in June, before the election, 2 witnesses, they were representing Indigenous businesses, and they were unsuccessful. They found that the government did very little to prepare them in terms of, awarding their contracts. So can you speak a little bit about what the government needs to do to develop additional processes to provide the necessary feedback so that, unsuccessful bidders are able to improve their applications or proposals moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've touched on another issue that we highlight with frequency, and that's the information that's shared in regret letters and the volume and quality of information that's provided in debriefs. And that's for active bidders who are unsuccessful in processes. But it's a matter of transparency and respect. And so if that information is not shared with bidders, as you can imagine, these are oftentimes small and medium-sized businesses who expend resources, time, and energy to bid on these proposals. And then to ultimately be given a 1 to 2 line regret letter leaves people very unsatisfied and likely unwilling to participate. So it is an area where I think there's a renewed focus. As I mentioned, you heard me say the Treasury Board contracting policy is migrating into the directive on procurement management. That directive is more explicit about the mandatory requirement for debriefs. So we are hopeful that there will be more debriefs, but again, it speaks to the quality of those debriefs. So it is something that my office continues to say out loud to make sure that there are improvements.
I'm going to ask you about single bidders. 53%, I guess in your report, it was identified, of competitive solicitation processes resulted in a single bidder. Can you explain, the large number of single bidders and solicitation processes that are intended to be competitive, and maybe how long this phenomenon of single bidders in a competitive process has been the norm, and how the government, contracting could be better simplified to increase competition?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will caution that it is a relatively small sample size to date. It was a trend that was noticed as we started the first few systemic reviews, and it's something that we continue to track. So as I mentioned in a previous response, I can't definitively say exactly why it's happening, but two conclusions that our office has reached without doing further analysis is that we found that where there's an incumbent, so for example, in a services contract, there is an existing supplier offering those services already. When other suppliers are made aware of the fact that there's an incumbent supplier, typically they choose not to participate because an assumption that that incumbent has an advantage. And another rationale as to why there might not be additional bidders in competitive processes is also due to simplification. And so the process, as you well noted, is quite complex and burdensome. So there are many efforts being made to help simplify, but those efforts will never end. And to be honest, it's one of those situations where you can look back 2 decades and we were talking about simplification 15 and 20 years ago. But again, concrete steps are being taken, e-procurement being an example where low dollar value procurements will now be automated to make the process more user-friendly. And so it's anticipated that that will produce some simplification to the process. But again, like I said, I can't underscore the importance enough of the need to continued focus on simplification of federal procurement.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate your responses. And just so the committee knows, we are definitely having an issue with interpretation. The way we're set up here is just not conducive. What I would suggest that we do is we are about to start the second round, which will basically be about 25 minutes. And then I would ask Mr. Jeglick if you would be okay to come back at a later time for further questioning, should the committee wish to do that at some point in time. But I would appreciate that. I think it's only fair to our interpreters such that they are not being stressed to the maximum here. So I'm just looking around the room and making sure that we're okay with that. I'm seeing nods around the room. And video, yes, okay, thank you. So we'll go into the second round and the final round, and we will start with Mr. McCauley for 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I lost. 5 minutes.
Point of order was 10. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Jeglick, Mr. Rabinovich, welcome back. Appreciate everything that the two of you and your team have done over the years. I know you've been with us several times, and I have to say, of all the government departments we've dealt with, head and shoulders, your team has certainly been the most dedicated to trying to improve our procurement process and other processes. So thanks very much. I just want to start going through your annual report and just pick out a couple items and ask you a comment on them. On the first page, we talk about the emergency spending. You know, comment does not provide justification to set aside duties of fairness and transparency that exist in non-emergency situations. Has that become more of an issue? And the reason I ask is, I spoke recently in the House about the government ignoring Treasury Board rules and the comment came back, well, sometimes with the volume of spending that we have, it's okay to ignore some rules. Are you seeing an increase in our departments trying to justify not following rules or the transparency? Are you using the COVID or the volume as a justification? Or is this just a warning for the future?
It's not something that we've studied specifically. It was something that we noted as a result of our study on emergency procurement. And so as we've seen other jurisdictions behave in emergencies, obviously COVID is a unique circumstance, as I'm sure everyone can appreciate, but ultimately it is important to still maintain certain rules and what those rules are, because ultimately you're still asking suppliers to behave in these exceptional circumstances in a manner in accordance with the principles that you lay out. So it's important that those principles be transparent so that they can participate in the process in a meaningful way.
Okay, thank you. Going in, you talk about simplification law, which I appreciate. In 2018, this committee put forward a report asking for simplification. It was a unanimous report. I don't think we've seen much progress or as much progress as our small businesses need. What kind of feedback are you getting from the bureaucracy when you're putting forward your suggestions? Are you getting pushback? Are your ideas being accepted? And where's the responsibility lie in getting this stuff done?
Right. So I think they're both fair and good questions. So in terms of responsiveness from the department, the department is certainly well aware. When I say department, I mean Public Services and Procurement Canada are well aware of the need to simplify. You heard me mention e-procurement. There are other initiatives underway that are designed to simplify the terms and conditions of contracts, reducing legalese, reference points outside of existing contracts by SAC clauses to be embedded within contracts. So there are several initiatives by the department. So they are receptive to our feedback. In terms of speed of change.
Yeah, do you believe there's the political will to make this happen? Like, what needs to happen to get this done? We've been talking about it for years. I know you've been pushing for it for years. I read it in your reports, and when Mr. Rabinovich was doing it, it's very clear. What are we missing that we cannot get this basic issue tackled for Canadians and small businesses?
Right, and I think there is another opportunity in time. We've transitioned out of the Treasury Board contracting policy. So I think there is a moment in time where there can be significant change. And so I'm quite anxiously awaiting to see what that new universe looks like. I mentioned e-procurement. That could potentially be a game changer. Again, I'm not here to offer a positive or negative opinion of it. It just is something that possibly could make the system much more simple and straightforward.
Great. You talk on page 4, your office has watched with interest a level of transparency surrounding emergency procurement, plans to continue to monitor the issue. If the issues persist, this is an area that might require a review. What issues specifically when you say if this issue persists?
So what we were looking for was transparent disclosure of contracts associated with COVID procurement. So as everyone else, we were looking to find disclosures associated with contract values, names of suppliers, etc. And we weren't coming up with much information. And so as a result, we were trying to identify when that information might become available. So we did launch, as I mentioned, a KDS piece on emergency procurement, and we then subsequently launched one on the national security exception. And as you, I'm sure, are well aware, both of those invocations then have implications on transparency. So it's not to say that we feel like our job is done by launching knowledge deepening and sharing pieces. It's an issue that we continue to track through environmental scanning. And if need be, we can and likely will include it as part of one of our systemic reviews.
I think my 10 minutes is up.
Thank you, Mr. Jugnick. And I was going to say 10 minutes goes by very fast. We will now go to Mr. Baines for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Mr. Jaglik and all the witnesses that are here today. My question, I'm going to focus a little bit on efficiency and effective procurement. So efficient and effective procurement is dependent on the quality and diversity of proposals submitted. In the 2018 report, Procurement Practice Review of bid solicitation processes, item 5 indicates that communications with bidders have been a problem. In your experience reviewing procurement processes, how long has this been a problem for prior to the 2018 report?
So you'll see if you look at the top 10 list of issues that we publish on a yearly basis, communications, and it comes in 2 forms. One is during a live solicitation process, there's the question and answer period, where suppliers have the right to ask questions of the contracting authority and get answers so that they can prepare responsive bids. At times, the answers that they receive are either not responsive or not timely, and that has an impact on their ability to provide responsive bids. And then the second aspect of communications is also something that we see in terms of regret letters and debriefs. And so the quality of information varies greatly. Some departments do an excellent job providing debriefs that are really fulsome and give suppliers a real opportunity to improve bids in subsequent processes. But there are other circumstances where departments may not provide such detailed information and therefore leave suppliers relatively unsatisfied with their involvement in the process.
Thank you,
Okay,
I apologize, Mr. Baines, I apologize, your 5 minutes is not up. However, we are having some major interpretation problems with our interpreters, and so I'm going to, I feel I'm going to have to cancel the meeting here today out of fairness to our interpreters, and I would ask the witnesses that we can hopefully get you back at another time. Also, what I would suggest is that to all of the members of the committee, the questions that you've had, if you would put them in writing and submit them to the clerk, we can then submit those to Mr. Jeglick, and he can share them with his witnesses to see if we can get written answers that we would then share with you along those lines. And then, as I say, the clerk, analysts, and I will work at another way to hopefully get the ombudsman back. So with that said, I would like to thank Mr. Jeglick and Mr. Rabinovich, who were the two that actually spoke, but also the other 8 that are here participating, and thank you all. I'm not going to go through all your names because I'll mess them up, I'm certain, but thank you all for participating, and look forward to your responses to the written questions. To our interpreters, and thank you very much for bearing with us on this situation. Unfortunately, we had to go to cell phones, and it just didn't work out the way we'd like it to. To the technicians, thank you for being here, as well as to the clerk and the analysts for staying with us. And with that said, I will call the meeting adjourned. No.